Hi gamers, I bet you're as excited as me because Dragon's Maze is coming out. Yep, this weekend is the Dragon's Maze pre-release, and just this Monday they released a whole spoiler for it. So I thought I would go over it with you guys and just kind of give my first impressions of the set and see what you guys think as well. So we're just going to try and go through as many of the cards as we can here, and I'm going to try and go through pretty fast, so let's see how far we get. So the first one is Boros Mastiff. It's just a 2/2 for 2 that occasionally gets lifelink. I would caution players on this one because it's a 2-drop. You're always going to want this card in your deck, but you may not want that many copies because Dragon's Maze is supposedly a much slower format than Gate Crash or any of the Gate Crash or Return to Ravnica. So while this might have been a pretty good card in Gate Crash because that format was so fast, it's not going to be as relevant in here. So next we go to the Hazda Snare Squad, which is a 1/4 for 3. So it's got a big butt, which can help you stabilize, but I'm not sure you will really want it in Boros because you're not really getting much aggro. However, its second ability, when it attacks, you may pay a white, and if you do, you tap a creature. That ability, I can see Boros actually wanting this card because you can punch your guys through. So you attacking with them, you trigger battalion, and you tap down their guy, and you hit with your squad. It's yeah, I can imagine it making the cut, but I'm not exactly 100% sure that Boros will want this card. Next card is Lay of Decree. It's an Azorius card. Detain up to 2 target creatures your opponents control. So kind of think of this like a fog almost. It's like almost make your creatures unblockable and fog at the same time. So I would value this not quite as highly as Inaction Injunction from Return to Ravnica, just because it doesn't replace itself. But I could see running one of these main board. Boros probably wants it because it's something that you can like play your guys and then cast it, and you can get through for the final strike with your team. I can see that as a part for it. So Maze Sentinel, I personally don't really like this cycle of cards, the multicolored creatures you control gain X cycle. But as you can see, it's got a huge butt, 3/6 for 6, and Vigilance. So this card is kind of instant stabilizing. You know, your opponent's going at you hardcore, and you drop this card, and hopefully you can swing with your team and still block with all of them. So it's kind of a hopefully you drop it and you stabilize right then. But it is 6 mana, and I generally like my 6 drops to do a little bit more. But I can see how it's playable. Okay, Renounce the Guilds. This is actually an interesting card. It's very much Geist hate. Too many of the Geist can just dominating formats. Each player sacrifices a multicolored permanent. Though I was wondering why this was that rare, because Edict effects, like Diabolic Edict, Cruel Edict, all those are generally at common or uncommon. Like Devour Flesh, the Edict from Gate Crash, that was at common. I think it's a rare because they don't want new players to get confused about colors. So this will show up less often, and it is an instant. So maybe new players might have a little trouble with it. Just be careful. I doubt most people will mainboard it. It depends because there is a lot of multicolored in Dragon's Maze. But just be careful. I'm not sure if I would mainboard it because it's too conditional, but I see no reason why not. So Riot Control, I don't particularly like this card. It's a fog, and you gain 1 life for each creature your opponent controls. So you don't want to play this in like Selesnya. Like what was that one? Druid's Deliverance, right? That prevented all combat damage and populated. That was better than this card. Like you don't want this in Boros. You don't want this in Selesnya. You could want it in Azorius, but most of the time you're doing tempo play in Azorius, and this won't really help you. So I don't think I'm going to play it, but I can see where it might make one. No, I don't even see that. Screw it. This card is not that good. It could see standard play in some kind of turbo fog, but other than that, no. Okay, Scion of V2. Now this guy I actually wanted to talk about because of this. If you cast it from your hand, See, they're not planning on having this guy just be a beating with Restoration Angel. So it's not the worst 5-drop. You get 6 power for 5 mana, which is very good. Over 3 bodies, so that's pretty good. You know, this is definitely something you're going to want to play in any deck that's running white. It's like almost a bomb. You get a lot of power for a few mana. So, you know, definitely something I would play if I open it. Steeple Rocks, flying first strike 3/1. Three power flyers are almost always good and limited. It's just the one toughness is a little bit scary because it can trade it. You know, just damage spells get it pretty easily. However, it does attack and block very well, so I would be happy with including one of these in the deck, in like an Azorius flying build or something like that. Just it's too expensive to run a lot of. However, Dragon's Maze is supposed to be a slower format, so I could see where this card would shine. So we get to the first of the Gatekeepers, and this is probably one of the better ones in my opinion. You get a dude with it that has vigilance, so you're getting a 4 power and 6 toughness for 4 mana, which is pretty good. They said in their article that they tried to cost it that each one would get you a card, and this is definitely worth a card. So I think it's a fine design. I really like this card, and if I get it, I will probably be playing it. So Wake the Reflections, it's just a 1 mana populate. I don't see any reason why you would want to run this. Like, there's the 5/5 worm token, I guess, which is a pretty big dude to populate. But most of the time, you're gonna be paying 1 mana for like a 1/1 bird, and 1/1s for 1 are not generally good and limited. So I would be cautious about this card. Definitely check your populate levels. And if you have enough populate, you could play this card, but otherwise, I would try to stay away from it because it just doesn't do enough. I mean, like, best case scenario, this is a 1 mana 5/5, which is bonkers, but worst case scenario, it's a dead card in your hand and you die with it in your hand. So, you know, it's a risk that you take. Aetherling, so this is the Morphling variant that they're printing in the set. What can I say? It's a bomb. It can totally win the game by itself. It dodges removal. It can't be blocked. It hits for 8 if they have nothing else going on. It's bonkers. Play with it. It's awesome. Hidden Strings. This is kind of like a bad Hands of Binding in my opinion. Sure, you can tap or untap something. So most likely what you do is you cast it, tap down their blocker, cipher it onto your dude, attack with it, cipher it, and then untap your dude so you can block. But then it loses out because you can't attack again. It doesn't. Hands of Binding was great because it let you just punch through the board stall because you got to tap down 2 creatures and that was it. And then you got to tap down 2 creatures and then you could continually tap down another one. So that what made that good. This just is like a poor man's Hand of Binding. Like, think of it like that. Maze Glider. This is probably one of the better ones of the multicolored set. You get a 3/5 flyer for flying, 3/5 flyer for 6, which is reasonable. I mean, it has a big butt, which is nice, so it can block a lot of things. So I could see how you play it, swing with your team, and still have a good amount of toughness to block with. And it's good. I'd probably play 1 if you have enough multicolored cards. So Mind Static. This card is just doubled mana leak. It costs 4 mana and some, you know, they pay 6. So that's a ton. I don't like this card very much because I would much rather just have a hard counter. And it's really hard in limited or constructed to pay more than 2 to 3 mana for a counter spell. Like, think of all of the counter spells that are really good. You have, you know, like Spell Snare, you have Remand, you have Negate, you have all those spells that they only cast 2 or less to counter spells. And so all these just aren't good. It's so hard to leave up 4 mana on your opponent's turn to counter something. So I might play 1 for the late game, but normally you want to be doing stuff with your mana in the late game. So I would maybe play 1, but definitely a sideboard card. I would not play that very much. Murmuring Phantasm, it's a 0/5 defender. I like the art. Let's say that it's like a bunch of mouths waiting to devour people. That's cool. But I think the 5 toughness is really the drawback because against like Selesnya and stuff, you have like the 5/5 worm token that's gonna punch through it. You have the flyers that it can't deal with. So it's like a bad hover barrier. Hover barrier was very good in its day, and this is like a bad version of it. So I could see playing it in like an Is It deck where you want to buy some time, or a Demir deck, most likely a Demir deck. But just be careful, make sure you have a way to win. Okay, next is the other Gatekeeper, the Opal Lake Gatekeeper. Now this one, I'm kind of torn because drawing a card is very, very good. I mean, you get a 2/4 that replaces itself. I think this is either the best or the second best in the set. It's just you get to replaces itself. It's really good. But I've had too many times when I've played cards like this and you just draw another land and you're like, well, that was awesome. But definitely, this is probably the second or the first best card, the Gatekeepers. So definitely play it if you're blue and you have enough gates. Runner's Bane. This is basically paralyzing grasp for creatures power 3 or less. So I think this card is good. You definitely want to play it if you have it. But since Dragon's Maze is going to be slower, supposedly, I would not run as many of them because you're more focused on the late game. That is, this is going to be a very good card against Boros and Azorius, and to a lesser extent Dimir and those types of guilds that rely on small creatures to kill you. But it's going to be very bad against Gruul, against Selesnya, and against Golgari too, or Simic. It's kind of a mix, but it's basically ensuring that you make it to the late game. Trait Doctoring. Not much to say about this card. I don't ever see a reason why you want to play it in limited. Like the one thing I could think of is that you go and you change this card, so you could say, red cards gain flying or something. Cypher is pretty useless on it. I'm sure there's some combo I'm missing, so if you know it, tell me. I would love to know what this card could be used for. Uncovered clues. That is, this card is pretty good in my opinion. I like it a lot. So basically, you look at the top 4 cards. If you hit an instant or sorcery, you can reveal 2 of them and put them into your hand. The rest go on the bottom of your library. So the good news is this can be a 2-for-1, and that is really good. So if you do hit a 2-for-1, you're getting insane value, sir, and I envy you for your value. If you hit 1 card, it's pretty good. It replaced itself. You got to look at the top 4, so you have a better idea of you're going to draw, hopefully, because you know what's on the bottom. But if you hit no cards, that's just a sad, sad day, sir, and I feel so bad for you, and I hope you draw better the rest of the day. But, this card, I would play it, and I may not even play it on curve, because I don't know exactly how strong curving out is going to be in this format. With Gate Crash, you needed to curve out in order to win, basically, or to survive. You needed to play a 2-drop, you needed to play a 3-drop, then you needed to play a 4-drop, and so forth. So, we'll see how good it is. Last one in this video is going to be Windrake, and we've all played with it. Hopefully, it was an M13 too. It's just a 2/2 flyer for 3. It's standard fodder for Azorius, or even Dimir if you just need a flyer to clinch out the game. Well, not clinch out the game, but just a flying beater. Well, anyway, that is my first impressions on white and blue cards in Dragon's Maze. I hope you like this review. I'm going to be trying to bring some more for you and just kind of give my feelings on the set. So if you have anything, please leave a comment and subscribe. And I will see you guys later. Bye.